Hello everyone, my name is Jessica Steffen. I was a 2016 graduate from Buehler High School, just about 40 minutes down the road. I'm a current junior at Yale University, which is in New Haven, Connecticut. My major is called Ethics, Politics, and Economics, which is essentially just a long-winded answer of saying that I'm pre-law. I am here as part of what's called the Yale Student Ambassador Program. So essentially over the last few weeks, I had been sent several emails asking me to apply to this position. And I thought it was very interesting that they were essentially begging me to apply, and I realized it was because out of the whole university, or I guess, so there's undergraduate, which is Yale College, and then Yale University infers both undergraduate and graduate schools. So out of Yale College, I know only 3 kids from the entire state of Kansas, including myself. And I realized that I was begged to apply to this position because not only is there only 3 kids from the entire state, but there's only 1 from our general part of the state, central Kansas. I would guess that the other 3 are probably from Kansas City, which I don't really consider our part of Kansas. So I decided that I wanted to apply because there's no reason that there shouldn't be more kids from Kansas at Yale. It's not like we're less qualified, it's not like we're less deserving, it's not like we're not as smart. And I'm kind of tired of walking around campus and asking someone where they're from, and they either say California or New York, because it's not like those places are any better than we are. And so if you guys are able to qualify for a place like Yale and could potentially get accepted to a place like this, I don't want you not to apply because you've never heard of it. So I'm basically merely here to expose you to a place like this, get you kind of thinking about maybe applying to the Ivy League, and at the very least, I'll bring up certain factors that you might be considering as you're applying to universities that you may have never thought about considering before.
So apparently your computer's not coping well with our system.
Okay.
So is
Oh, is
there,
it like it's a mirror?
Yes.
So I could like drag it over? Is that what you mean?
It's an HDMI, so you have to set it up for...
Hey guys, some technical difficulties. We don't know how to work a computer, but we go to Yale, so we turn it around. Okay.
Does that work? Yeah. Yeah, I'll just put it up there.
I will.
all right. So you need to pay attention. Hey.
Pay attention.
Can I actually put mine on?
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks. Sorry. Okay, so we're having some technical difficulties, but I promise this was going to be an incredible presentation, and it still will be. So, like I said, I'm here to represent Yale undergraduate, so that means Yale College. So, as you've probably heard, it's for the Ivy League. It's in New Haven, Connecticut, which is on the East Coast. It's located right in between New York City and Boston. So it takes about an 1.5-hour train ride to get to New York City and about a 2.5-hour train ride to get to Boston, which is super cool because if you go about an 1.5 hours from Buehler, you get maybe a little past Wichita. So it's pretty cool to have that kind of geographic difference. So Yale is both a research university and a liberal arts college. So liberal arts means that there's no such thing as a pre-professional program. The idea is that breadth, depth, and exploration will give every student the necessary skill set and knowledge to be perfectly qualified for whatever profession that they want to get into. So as you're applying to universities, you may be thinking, oh, one school is better known for their sciences, one school is better known for their arts. Well, because Yale alternates with Harvard in the U.S. News and World Report as #1 in the country, you're not having to sacrifice one thing or the other by choosing the arts or the sciences. Because we are the #1 university in the country and potentially the world, you're not really sacrificing by choosing anything. So like I said, it is a research university and a liberal arts college. So with liberal arts, part of our requirements is not that you have to take writing 101 or anything like that, or science, biology 101. The idea is that you take distributional requirements. So there's humanities, there's a foreign language requirement, there's a science requirement, social sciences, quantitative reasoning. And they're not going to shove you into any certain classes to fulfill those requirements. You merely just take one of the 15 options to fulfill those requirements. So, for example, as a pre-law major, essentially, I'm clearly not well rehearsed in chemistry or anything like that. So in my way of fulfilling the science requirement, I took what's called issues approach to biology, which is like an ethical approach to the new biotechnology that's coming out, and then conservation biology. So they have definite ways for non-majors to fulfill requirements in majors that they aren't as well rehearsed in. And then what's really cool about the research university part of it is that our professors, while they are also teaching some of your classes, they're also doing research projects and some of the most cutting edge stuff that's going on in the entire world. So for example, I have to tell this story every time. So one of our intro microeconomics classes, there was a professor teaching, and all of a sudden, this is a class of about 15 kids, so the room is pretty small. It's not like it needs to be big to fit that few people. And all of a sudden, there's just a crew of cameramen and microphones just flying down the aisles. They bust open the doors, interrupt class in the middle of it, and shove a camera and a microphone in this professor's face. And in the middle of this lecture, they present him with a Nobel Prize in economics. So that in itself is mind-blowing, that this guy who just earned a Nobel Prize in economics is just teaching a class of 15 kids in a microeconomics class. But what's funny is like he's like shocked, he's like emotional, and then in like the next breath he's like, okay, we still have a quiz tomorrow, so like this doesn't change anything. So what's really cool about Yale and any Ivy League is that is the quality of professor that you're going to be taught by, but at the same time what makes Yale special is the relationship that you can form with those professors. So like I said, you can choose the arts or the sciences. You're not sacrificing anything by choosing one or the other. So when I was actually choosing what college I was going to go to, I was being recruited for basketball, so I actually committed to Yale to play basketball. But as I was looking for universities, I visited Princeton, Harvard, Brown, and Yale. And so as I was looking through colleges and being recruited through basketball, my main thought was, where am I going to win basketball games? And sure, that was important to me. But now that I've spent 3 years at Yale, I think about all the things that I didn't really consider that I wish I would have that are really important and now impact me a lot now being 3 years in. So some of the unexpected things that I didn't think about, and whether you're thinking about applying to Yale or not, I hope you guys hear these things and maybe consider it when you're thinking about applying to college. But one of the things I didn't think about was, there's the obvious, which is geographic distance. Like, how comfortable are you being away from home? It is on the East Coast. You're going to have to fly there and back. But if you're comfortable being away from home and you want to see what the world looks like outside of Kansas, then that might be something you're interested in. Something else is the sense of community on campus. I've actually heard a lot about other Ivy League schools that maybe aren't as willing to share notes with you if you miss a class. And so I can't imagine, at Yale, I've experienced quite the opposite. So anytime I've missed class for maybe an away game, I've had all my friends be like, oh, I'll send you these notes, I'll send you these notes, did you miss this today, I'll send you this. So the sense of community is actually really important. And then third that I wasn't expecting is the political climate. So whether you're interested in politics or not, the university that you may be applying to might inherently be interested in politics, and the type of student that they normally draw might be. And so depending on how involved you are and how invested you are in the political scene, that might be something that matters to you. So Yale is actually pretty liberal. And coming from Central Kansas, that was kind of difficult for me. Just the different sense of culture that those people are used to that I wasn't was very difficult, but it was very enlightening, and it's something that broadens your horizon. And when you're getting ready for an interview and they're like, oh, what was it like coming from Buhler, Kansas to the East Coast? You say, yeah, sure, it was a culture shock, but at the same time, now I'm able to talk to anybody who might have certain issues or whatever with the Midwest. I can now talk to them in the same breath that I can talk to somebody on the East Coast who has a totally different mindset about things. So it really just makes you a totally more well-rounded person. So there's over 80 majors. There's a 6-to-1 faculty to student ratio. There's over 2,000 classes. There's 53 foreign languages. And 75% of the 2,000 classes available enroll 20 and fewer kids. So while it is a university, it's nothing like KU or K-State where you're taking classes with 500 kids at a time. So a few seconds ago I was talking about what's special about Yale is the relationship between its students and those faculty who are receiving Nobel Prizes in whatever field that they're working in. So because 75% of the 2,000 courses enroll 20 kids or fewer, you are essentially forced to form an intimate relationship with these professors because there's no way of dodging them in a class of 20 kids. So while that's initially pretty intimidating, these people literally just won the most prestigious award right in front of you. These professors are at Yale specifically because they want to have a relationship with kids like this. They understand that the quality of student that gets into a place like Yale is the type that are going to win the next Nobel Prize, and so they love having a hand in whatever work students are working on at the time. So that's especially what I've learned to love about Yale. I've had several lunches with one of my my environmental politics and law professors, and there were multiple times throughout class, throughout the semester, that he'd be talking about a research project that he was working on, and then he'd be like, very humbly, genuinely very humbly, he'd be like, okay, so I'm going to show you this video because this is like the most eloquent and succinct way that I can explain what my research project was. He pulls up a video and it's him being interviewed by CNN about his environmental project. So it's unbelievable what these people are doing. If you guys can see this picture, I'll hold it up a little bit. This is called Sterling Memorial Library. So it's one of our main libraries on campus. So this grass right underneath it actually extends for about a football field yard's length. And that's what we call cross campus. So kind of funny story, the initial architect of this library originally intended it for it to be a church. And so he approaches the founders of Yale and he's like, okay, like, how's this look? Are we good? Should I start building? And they're like, well, we actually don't want Yale to be a religiously affiliated university, so we can't really have a church in the middle of campus. So the architect, he's kind of hurt, but he goes back to the drawing board. He's like, sure, okay. So he literally changes none of his plans. He doesn't change a single detail. And he approaches the founders again, and he's like, okay, I think this is it. It's a library. Change nothing. And they're like, yeah, okay, whatever, sure. So it looks incredibly like a church, but it's actually a library. And actually underneath this football field yard's worth of grass is actually another underground library that we call Bass Library. I personally try to avoid it because it's kind of dark and kind of sad, and it reminds me too much of finals, so I don't usually go there too much. So I'm going to talk about engineering for a little bit, if that interests any of you. So this building is called the SEED. It's CEID. I actually have no idea what it stands for. But I walked past it several times. It's on one of the main streets that people have to walk by to get to their language classes. But the building is open to both engineering majors and non-engineering majors, and all of the materials are provided by the university. And it's open until like the wee hours in the morning, so I see people in there all the time that are working on stuff. So I know kids are building like race cars, mechanical hands in there, but I know a few of my friends wanted to go to a women's basketball game a month ago, and they were like, well, we want to make a poster. Where are we going to make a poster at? They went to the SEED. So you can do anything from build a race car to draw a pretty picture on a poster. So that's pretty cool. So from here on, I'm pretty much going to mention Yale's endowment for the rest of the time. So Yale has one of the biggest endowments in the country. It probably is maybe second to Harvard. So endowment is essentially, what that means is that Yale has essentially enough funding to fund like things like financial aid programs, student abroad trips, independent research and study projects, pretty much extracurriculars, anything like that. Yale uses its endowment to make sure that students can pursue any passion that they want and can allow money to be a non-factor. So this is an example of a bunch of engineering majors that got together and built this race car for like some race car contest, probably a race. And what's especially cool is that Yale pretty much backed monetarily anything that they needed. So Yale definitely allows you to pursue whatever you want. So living and learning. So raise your hand if you've watched Harry Potter. Incredible, great taste, everybody. So a lot of you guys have heard of dorms with KU and K-State. So Yale actually has what's called residential colleges. So there's 14 different residential colleges on campus, and you're assorted to them kind of like how you are in Harry Potter, except of course without the magic hat and the drama with Dumbledore and all that stuff. So you're randomly assorted in, and the idea is that each of these residential colleges is a microcosm of the greater Yale community. So whatever quantitative ratios that they can draw out of the greater Yale community, you can draw the exact same ratios out of the residential colleges. So that includes gender ratios, athletes to non-athletes, the kind of sense of diversity, all of that stuff. Geographic diversity was socioeconomic diversity, pretty much everything that you see in the greater Yale, you'll see in your residential college. And it allows you to pretty much have an immediate family of a much more welcoming and less intimidating group of people that are just right there immediately. So with every residential college comes you have a head of college and a dean. Your head of college is in charge of acclimating you to your social life. Your dean is in charge of your academic life. As you can imagine, the dean of college is preferred out of the two, but that's all right. With every residential college comes a buttery, which is essentially a subsidized concession stand by the university that hires students to work it from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. And they basically make anything from like massive red Solo cups of cookie dough to like grilled chicken quesadillas for like 25 cents, which is absolutely incredible, especially during finals week when you like haven't made it to the dining hall, but you need a 25-cent cup of cookie dough, because of course you need that. And what's really cool about Yale's head of college, which is in charge of your social life, is with Yale there comes the extensive alumni network. So I'm sure you guys have both heard of Bill and Hillary Clinton. They both went to Yale. Both Bushes went to Yale. Anderson Cooper, the anchor of CNN, went to Yale. Jodie Foster's, like, one of her kids, Jodie Foster was an actress in Silence of the Lambs. Her kid goes to Yale. Stephen Colbert's kid goes to Yale. 2 Russian princesses are in my sorority. They go to Yale. So with this extensive alumni network, you have people who go off and publish books, become presidents of the United States, become news anchors. And when they make a lot of money, they love nothing more than to 1, donate to Yale, and 2, donate to their residential college. So anytime I get an email from my head of college, it's almost always something like, okay, we just got donated 10 incredible tickets right behind the dugout, Boston Red Sox, Yankees tickets for this Friday at New York, first come, first serve. So it's opportunities like that that I believe you would get almost nowhere else, and the geographic location of Yale makes a quick trip to a Yankees game very attainable.
10 minutes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to jump ahead. So New Haven experiences all 4 seasons. It's a lot more wintry than it is windy, like in Kansas. The key thing that I would love to talk about before I hopefully open it up to questions is that there's a huge misconception about the Ivy League, and I don't know if Yale specifically, but definitely the Ivy League, which is that your parents have to be super wealthy to be able to apply and get accepted and to be able to financially afford a place like Yale. And I'm here to tell you that that's just absolutely not true. So the average, because of Yale's endowment, which is quite extensive, the average grant granted from the financial aid program is $50,000. So while the total annual tuition of Yale is like $73,000, that in itself already drops it down to $23,000, and then it gets very competitive with a place like KU or K-State. I believe it's either 84 or 86% of students graduate with no debt, and if they do, they graduate with an average of $14,000, which compared to KU and K-State, that's very competitive. And I'm also here to tell you that because of the extensive financial aid program, it's actually extremely likely that you could attend a place like Yale cheaper than you could KU or K-State. So in no way should you guys leave here believing that you can't afford Yale, because that's not true. So affordable for everyone who receives financial aid. So if your family actually brings in an annual income less than $65,000 a year, it's actually highly likely that you'll go to Yale for free. And even if your family is making more than $250,000 a year, you'll actually get probably a substantial bit of help from the financial aid program. The financial aid department considers things like what your family is going through at the time. So maybe if a parent is being hospitalized, is sick, if you're having to pay hospital bills, they'll consider that when they're calculating your annual tuition. And if your parents are paying for college tuition for multiple kids at the same time, they'll consider things like that. So they take applicants holistically. It's not they consider your family background, all sorts of things like that. So when you are thinking about applying to Yale, so there's tools like Common App, Collision App, and Westbridge App. I personally use Common App, but I do know that QuestBridge app is particularly helpful for students that are low income, because QuestBridge does a particularly good job of connecting low-income students with universities like Yale, but not exclusively Yale, that do have a financial aid program that can help those low-income students. So if that's any interest to you, I highly recommend using that tool when you're starting to apply to colleges. I will say that the average ACT score, I believe, is I want to say between a 33 and a 35. And while that is initially shocking, I know that. The applications are viewed like very holistically, like I just said, so everything in context, so your family background, your extracurriculars, your community outreach. Essentially, Yale, I believe, wants to just see that students with the test scores that prove that they're capable of things have actually done something other than just get a test score. So they want to see that you've looked beyond yourself. You can find all this information on Yale's website. Just Google, like, what does Yale look for in an application? Yale also offers what's called a quick cost estimator. So in 3 minutes, you can type in the necessary information, and in 3 minutes, it'll tell you what your likely annual tuition cost would be. That's essentially the end of my presentation. Are there any quick questions?
So just to back up what she said, we were looking up this morning, and the most recent book I have is 2017-18 book of colleges said the average cumulative debt for K-State was $27,000, and you said 16?
I said 14.
14.
Yeah.
And my other source here says an average ACT of 34.
Okay. So there you go.
Do you mind sharing your test score?
Unfortunately, I have been advised not to share my test
Okay.
score, only because you're not supposed to shoot for like an explicit test score. That's not really the point of the presentation. It's just to understand that like Yale is much more available to you than you think it is, and it's very much worth considering if you haven't before. Well, thank you guys for either, I don't know if you were forced to be here or if you came here voluntarily.
This is their regular placement, and you just came to them.
Oh,
so.
perfect. Well, thank you for allowing me to
There's a few
come to you.
extras that come in.
Okay, cool. All right, well, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Shots fired.
Thanks for watching.
Subscribe for
Thank
more
you for
content.
hosting. I
Subscribe for more content.
Yeah.
You.
Yeah, good.
Bye, vlog. And the vlog's here.